Once upon a time there was an old man and an old woman, and they had no children, said Claudia sadly, as she washed the dishes after celebrating her 40th birthday. Come on, Claudia, we're still young. Shane tried soothing his wife in a cheerful voice as he wiped the plates beside her. The woman grinned and suddenly asked seriously, Don't you regret being with me? Maybe you could have had children with someone else, but I don't regret it at all, Shane said firmly. Our life hasn't become any worse, has it? They say the first child is the first quarrel, but we have no children, so there have been no quarrels. Is that a bad thing? Of course it is, Claudia agreed. She didn't want to argue with her husband about it, especially since they had long ago accepted the fact that they would not have children. They had never even considered breaking up because of it. And now, almost 20 years after getting married, that thought was even more distant. However, as they grew older, both spouses started having secret thoughts about the possibility of loneliness. Their parents had passed away and they had no siblings. So if one spouse lost the other, they would be all alone in this world. However, they didn't speak about it aloud. Why worry before it's time? Soon after that conversation, Claudia suddenly started feeling unwell and became worried. She didn't have any specific pain, but everything felt different somehow. She grew tired quickly, had unexplained drowsiness, swollen legs, nausea, and no appetite. What if something terrible had happened? How would Shane cope alone? She went to the doctor, who ordered various tests and referred her to other specialists. Strangely enough, the doctors found no abnormalities, but her condition was not improving. At first, Claudia had hidden her ailments and visits to the doctors from her husband, but eventually she couldn't bear it any longer and told him the truth. I don't know what's wrong. I am really afraid to go to the doctors. Everyone says that everything is fine, but I feel that something is wrong. I only have to go to the gynecologist, who will definitely find some abnormalities, or maybe to postpone the visit. It happens that people get sick and then everything goes away. Maybe I'm just tired. Don't say that, please. You literally used to die every time you got a runny nose, and now you're saying it'll go away on its own. Dear, we're not getting any younger. And you women, they say you may be going through menopause. You can get all sorts of ailments during that time. Maybe you too. You should see a doctor. See if they'll prescribe you some medicine. Yeah, listen, you're probably right. I hadn't thought of that. That makes sense, agreed Claudia, whose mood was really unstable due to her health problems. Every now and then she wanted to cry. Having calmed down his wife, Shane went with her to the doctor, saying that he would wait near the clinic. And he didn't recognize his wife when she came out. She looked so amazed and enlightened. What is it? What did the doctor say? He asked. Well, he said that in 6 months, our menopause will be born. Claudia replied with a broad smile. Who will be born? Shane did not immediately understand. A child will be born, Shane. I'm pregnant. Can you imagine? As if not believing her own words, Claudia replied, and tears ran down her cheeks. Really? Really? Shane asked in bewilderment, not knowing whether to rejoice or be frightened by this news. Well, is that a good reason to joke? I'm telling you in all seriousness. I told the doctor that I was probably going through menopause. She looked at me with laughter and said, Menopause? You're 3 weeks pregnant. Maybe more. I did not believe her, and she told me the matter is yours, of course, but you will need to take care of yourself, because the baby will still be born regardless of your belief. And she was laughing at me. And I'm standing here laughing and crying too. What is it, Shane? It's been 10 years since we dreamed of anything like this. We've accepted that God didn't give it to us. That's it. And this news, Claudia, you're kidding. Shane still couldn't believe it. Stop joking. Is it really true? It's true, and you are right. We're not such an old man and an old woman. We're young parents. When the couple walked home from the outside, they seemed young, in love, perhaps even a little champagne. They laughed, they hugged, they chatted, they were happy. As they approached the house, Shane came to his senses and gently took his wife under his arm. That's all very well, Claudia, but you must take great care of yourself. How are you feeling? And anyway, what did the doctors say about what you may eat, what you may drink, how to behave in general? The doctor said everything is going well. Now I'll have to visit her regularly, get checked, have tests, go through all the procedures that will be prescribed. It's just like any other pregnancy. Nothing special. It's not like I'm an alien. So there's nothing unusual about my condition. I have every chance of having a baby at term. Of course, I feel not very well, but many pregnant women feel like this. Or maybe even worse, I don't know. But no matter how much Claudia cheered up, she didn't feel very well. The doctors reassured her that it was only natural. And when it turned out after the ultrasound that she was carrying twins, everything became clear. Your body is not so healthy as in your 20s. You're giving birth for the first time and even twins. So all your ailments are quite natural and they do not require any medical intervention. Just take care of yourself, rest more, and if possible, walk in the fresh air. It was understandable, but it didn't make the poor woman feel any better, and neither did her husband. Shane suffered almost as much as his wife, agonizing over the fact that he couldn't do anything to help. They weren't rich at all, but for the sake of his beloved wife, who was going to give birth to 2 babies at once, he was ready to do anything. But Claudia understood perfectly well that her condition would only be relieved by childbirth. So she didn't show any special demands, and she didn't have the strength for them either. And Shane's friends even teased him a little. I think you're taking the pregnancy even worse than your wife. You've lost weight, you're exhausted, doctors are watching her, and I've read that late kids are the most successful. But unfortunately, no one realized that Shane was more worried because his wife was having a hard time and he couldn't help her. And soon, to everyone's joy, the day came when the twins were born. Charming, healthy baby girls. The parents were overjoyed. That's why they had waited so long for the sake of becoming a father and mother of 2 such wonderful girls. They named them in honor of their parents, who had never met their grandchildren. Nina and Alexis grew up without any problems. They were healthy and intelligent, as if justifying their status as late and very promising children. They looked very similar, but they differed from each other in character and hobbies. Alexis was a quiet girl who loved animals and dreamed of becoming a veterinarian. And Nina, more lively and sociable, practiced gymnastics and wasn't in a hurry to choose a profession. Despite all these differences, the sisters got along very well with each other, and their mother and father couldn't even remember a time when the girls caused them any trouble at home. They did well in school, were polite and active, and willingly helped their mother with household tasks. If anything worried their parents, it was their own age. It would be nice to be a young mom, Claudia sometimes sighed. Age really makes itself felt. I can't run and play with my daughters like others. And I'm always afraid that someone will ask who I am to them, their mom or their grandmother. So I have to look younger all the time, but I don't know if I can keep up or not. How old do you think I look? Honey, you don't look like our daughter's big sister. I look more like a grandfather, but that doesn't bother me much. Well, so what? I'm not going to dye my hair or my eyes. I'd rather look like a grandfather than a clown, replied Shane and hugged his wife tightly. But the wife had another reason to worry. And they also say that late children become early orphans. Think about it, when they're 20 years old, we'll already be in our 7th decade. Stop it, Claudia. That's ridiculous to listen to, honestly. Do you think our daughters would love us any less if we looked any different? Have they ever told you that you're not young enough to be their mom? And I don't think we should pay attention to anyone else's opinion, especially since I've never heard anyone else call me old, let alone you. Yes, we're practically the same age, and everyone thinks I married a young girl. Oh, it's all your compliments, his wife waved away, still flattered by Shane's words. It's better to give compliments than to make such predictions. You're burying us, and then you're writing us off as decrepit old men. Honey, live in peace. We're healthy. Of course, we're not young, but not ancient either. You have strength. Everything's all right. But for some foolish reasons, you're looking for trouble. Don't anger God. Her husband reproached her with discontent, who really did not like this trait in his beloved's character. But that's how Claudia was. When everything was going too well, she began to fear soon they would have to pay for their good fortune with some misfortune. And indeed, misfortune struck in her life. So she kept worrying, no matter how much her husband reproached her and no matter how much she scolded herself. Indeed, their life was very calm. They married for love, lived harmoniously even when they were alone. And when their daughters were born, Claudia and Shane couldn't be happier with their little princesses. And although their financial situation wasn't the best, as Claudia no longer worked and dedicated her time to their children, they tried not to deny their daughters anything. Luckily, the girls weren't particularly demanding. They didn't have time for such things. They were occupied with their own studies, leaving no time for frivolities. Besides, the sisters were best friends to each other. They didn't need to compete with other girls in terms of clothes or toys. They had everything in common. And on the 15th birthday, Alexis suddenly asked for a special gift, a dog. They had been talking about how much she wanted a four-legged friend for a long time, but until now, her parents had discouraged her. She already had pets, hamsters and parrots, but her parents were persistent in their refusal to get a dog, telling her to wait. When you grow up, you'll definitely get a dog, but for now, you and Nina are still young. You have to walk the dog, take care of it. Who's going to take care of him? Your mom? For a while, Alexis reluctantly agreed to wait. But on the eve of her 15th birthday, during the summer, a neighbor's dog gave birth to puppies. It happened at their summer house. Alexis saw how adorable little cubs were frolicking on the neighbor's property, and she became determined. She declared that she wanted a dog, and it had to be Alibi. Are you crazy, daughter? Do you really want Alibi? They have such a dog as a guard, and it's such a huge creature. Why do we need such a dog? It will just be a machine for destroying food. Shane was horrified. And produce so much waste, echoed her mother. It will suffocate us with its fur alone. You can't wipe a dog like that with a rag after a walk in the bathtub. No, I'm strongly against it. But Alexis was too persistent. And they soon realized that, without an Alibi, they wouldn't be able to return home that summer. Alexis swore that they wouldn't feel any inconvenience from having a dog. Honestly, I'll take care of him myself. I'll clean up after him and do everything. And as for food, don't worry, I'll get a part-time job. I'll put up ads or distribute flyers. There are plenty of other jobs. And who will study for you? Nina, at least you should tell your sister that it's not a good idea. The parents tried to get their other daughter on their side, but as usual, she sided with her sister. No, having a big dog is great. No one will bother us. Everyone will be jealous. It's not like having a chihuahua, but a dog like Alibi is almost like a person. In short, in the confrontation between the children and the parents, the girls won, of course. The neighbor agreed to sell them a puppy. Alexis chose the one she liked the most and named him Charlie. Everyone immediately fell in love with this little boy, who was already the size of a human toddler. He was cute, fluffy, mischievous, but already smart and well aware that his main and only mistress was Alexis. He also loved the other members of the family, but Alexis was his supreme being. Once, when her father scolded her sternly, Charlie even growled threateningly at him. Although in general, he was a very friendly dog and incredibly cute as a puppy. No passerby could pass by without being captivated when Alexis took her little furry friend for a walk, but it was already evident that he would grow up to be a huge dog. Sometimes, while caressing the puppy, Claudia would say, "Oh, Charlie, if only you could stay forever as a little teddy bear. Such a cute, mischievous boy. But you'll grow up to be a good calf or even a bull." Alexis fulfilled her promise and took great care of Charlie. She practiced with him, took him for walks, taught him various dog tricks, and even completed a course for young dog trainers to properly educate her furry friend. She also managed to find a part-time job despite her parents' disapproval. Of course, they could provide for the dog and Alexis needed to focus on her side 10. However, she realized perfectly well that support for her, Nina, and their four-legged companion was not easy for her parents. Charlie had a big appetite and required high-quality food for his well-being. To make matters more challenging, Charlie grew much faster than children do. Another problem was that soon only Alexis was capable of taking Charlie for the walk. He had become a big, strong, and highly active adolescent dog. It was difficult to keep him on a leash, and letting him roam freely was out of the question, due to people's fear of such a large dog potentially attacking them. Though Shane and Claudia occasionally expressed regret over Alexis's choice, she was content. "I can walk at night now, and no one can touch me," she said. "But why do you need to wander the streets at night?" her father would ask. "It's Nina who has picked up that trend, but at least she has a beau accompanying her." Indeed, Alexis's younger sister already had an admirer at the age of 16. They often went out together in the evenings. However, Shane and Claudia were not overly concerned. They had known Isaac for a long time. He was a decent guy from the same school as the sisters, just a year older, and came from a good family. Nina's parents valued a good family not in terms of wealth, but in terms of being friendly, non-drinking, and hard-working. Therefore, Shane and Claudia had no reservations about Nina's choice of companion. They were more upset by Alexis' choice. "What kind of life do you have, Alexis?" her mother would ask. "You study, work part-time, and take care of your dog. When do you have time to go out with friends or go dancing?" "Oh, Mom, you always say the same thing. Other parents scold their daughters for going out, but you want the opposite for me. By the way, thanks to Charlie, I've met many interesting people. I'm never alone when I go out because there's a whole group of us dog owners. And they're all good people because you can't be a bad person and own a dog. So don't worry, I don't need to go out at all." Yes, on one hand, that's a good thing, her mother agreed. But on the other hand, you will never have a second youth anymore. And you want to spend it on a dog. "Look at Nina. She's so happy and radiant." "I'm happy too, honestly," replied the daughter, embracing Charlie. Looking at her, there was no doubt that the girl was happy, and all the mother's doubts were unfounded. But what mother doesn't worry about her child? "I hope it doesn't take too long for my daughters to have babies. It is better to be young parents anyway. It's good that Nina will marry early. At least I will be able to admire her happiness and, God willing, wait for grandchildren." Well, and maybe, looking at her sister, Alexis won't delay with this either. After all, she socializes a lot with people, and she's such a good, responsible girl. Who else to love if not her? Claudia habitually pondered about her daughter's future. Time passed, and the girls successfully graduated from school. Alexis enrolled in veterinary college, while Nina still couldn't decide on a profession and went to art school. Her fiancé also enrolled in the college with more definite plans. Both parents had to discuss the future wedding, as the young couple had already firmly decided to get married. "And where are you rushing off to?" Isaac's mother sighed at times, but even her husband disagreed with her. If they love each other, why wait? Because some say that first you need to hang out, and they hang out so much that they stay alone and stay. No, they have found their happiness. Let them hold on to it. "Yes, but early marriages can be fragile," sighed the wife. "And who needs late marriages? That's how they get used to living on their own. Then you'll be crying your eyes out trying to get them married." "No, they have made their decision and it's good. They are still studying," she disagreed. "I won't argue though. I don't want anything to go wrong in their family. And I don't want to be blamed. I am not my son's enemy." Nina's parents also had mixed emotions about their daughter's marriage. Claudia, who was known for her pessimism, was particularly concerned. However, this time she managed to hold back and only sighed. "Well, I think every mother is sad to give her daughter away in marriage, although not getting married would be even worse. I'm more worried about you, Alexis. Now you're also 18 and you don't think about your future at all. Haven't you been on a single date, Alexis? All you do is hang out with Charlie. I don't know why we got you a dog. If it were a smaller dog, I'd go out with him, but not with this beast. Mom, make your mind up about what you're upset about. Are you upset that Nina is getting married or that I'm single?" Alexis laughed angrily. "And trust me, Charlie will not interfere with my personal life. And if you want me to go on dates, I'll start soon, so don't worry. We have plenty of guys at vet school. Then I exactly won't have time to take care of Charlie. You'll have to do it instead of me." "Oh no, then don't go out with them or take your beast with you on the dates. By the way, dogs are the best way to check out potential suitors. Charlie won't let just anyone have you." Claudia seemed to be joking, but there was still some anger behind her words. What was it? Every conversation with her daughter somehow always revolved around the dog. No matter what they talked about with her, all they heard was, "Charlie, Charlie." Let's say Alexis gets married and has kids. Will the dog still be her top priority? Even now, when she comes home, the first thing she asks is what Charlie ate and how he behaved, not how her parents are feeling or what are they doing. But in general, Alexis was fine. So, such thoughts of her mother were rather fleeting. Besides, she had to think about her other daughter, who was about to leave the house. They could offer her and Isaac to live with them. After all, they had a 4-bedroom apartment, so they could have their own room. But the young husband probably wouldn't want to live with his mother-in-law. And their spacious apartment could be cramped for all people, plus a huge dog that's almost like a person. Not to mention the fact that the young couple might have a child soon, which the future grandmother desired the most. Claudia felt the disadvantages of being a late mother more and more often. Even her future wedding, Nina discussed more with her sister than with her directly. Of course, she included her parents in the discussions. But when it came to choosing the bride's dress or the wedding venue, the decisive word often went to Alexis. It's not that Claudia was offended by it. She understood perfectly why it was that way. But she often thought that if she were younger, she would have been more actively involved in her children's lives. And when it was Alexis's turn to get married, they would be even older. Although the girls never discussed their parents' age, Claudia could feel that they were not on the same wavelength. Meanwhile, Alexis was genuinely happy for her sister and often whispered with her about the upcoming marriage. The girls didn't mean to offend their mother, and frankly speaking, it wasn't about age, but because they were best friends as well as sisters. "Tell me, do you really love Isaac so much?" Alexis said. "Of course I do. When he's not around, it feels like I'm not really living. I want him to always be by my side. And it will be very soon. I even thought about transferring to his college so we could always be together there. But we'd still be in different courses because it would be too difficult for me. I'm not good at math. And, Alexis being apart but knowing that we'll see each other soon is not so bad. I'm so happy when I see him. It's like a light bulb turns on inside me. That's great. I'd like to feel that way about someone. Although, I really liked a boy back in high school. I was even convinced that I was truly in love with him. I thought we would get married, but he didn't even know. He didn't pay any attention to me at all." Alexis laughed. "But it's gone. You're not in pain anymore, are you?" Nina asked anxiously. "I didn't suffer much then, and I don't suffer much now. It's funny to think that I used to like him because now he doesn't seem cute at all. I like some guys at the vet, but without any light bulbs." Alexis replied and smiled loudly. "Does anybody like you? Have you ever noticed that?" Nina kept being curious. "Well, of course I have. When we go for a walk with Charlie, there's a guy who joins us all the time. His name is Michael. He lives in the neighboring house. Well, he obviously likes me a lot. He could be out with other guys, with his husky, but he's still with me and Charlie." Alexis laughed again. "Only, he's only 15. So dating or love are out of the question. But it's still interesting to talk to him. Aren't there any more serious suitors? The kind that would invite you to go out with them? Without the dogs, let's say?" "I have," Alexis grumbled unhappily. "But there are no options at all. One adult man with 2 dachshunds I do not know. He is about 30 years old, probably, or more. He even hinted that it would be nice to date, but I blew him right off. And another one, he's with the border collie. You've seen him. I think the dog's name is Cherie. He was hitting on me too. But you know what? He's married. I try to stay away from him now, of course. If he's out with his dog, I'm ashamed even to be seen by his wife now." "Why should you be ashamed? You weren't flirting with him, were you?" "Of course not. I didn't even know how to do it. In fact, I don't know if I'll ever get married. I don't feel like it. Although when we were picking out a dress for you, I was looking for one for me too. Will you let me try yours on? Or is that bad luck? Of course you're not a stranger. You're my own sister. And what's more, you're my twin. You and I are almost one in the same. That is, you're my other self." Nina laughed. She was so happy on the threshold of the wedding. So beautiful when she measured her outfit. Isaac seemed to have equally strong feelings for his bride. He too tried not to leave Nina's side for a day. At every meeting, he rushed to her as if he hadn't seen her for a year, even if the separation lasted only a few hours. It was hard not to envy such a feeling and wish the same for herself. Isaac was a loving, reliable, smart young man. When he became a fiancé, he matured a lot, became a serious person, looked not like a boy but like a man, and after he passed his driver's license, his father entrusted him to drive his car, which worried Claudia a little. Every time he and Nina drove somewhere together, she always worried. Well, I would be okay if they were only in the city, but they go out of town and on the highway. They can speed up. Isaac isn't an experienced driver. He's just got his license. It's understandable that I'm worried. But who wouldn't be? She often said. Meanwhile, the wedding day was steadily approaching. Everyone was already counting the hours until the registration. A few days in advance, the bride and groom went to the restaurant chosen for the banquet. They took Alexis with them as the main consultant. Be careful, Claudia reminded them. She and her husband went outside to see the young people off and to take Charlie for a walk. But suddenly, the dog began to behave strangely, became anxious, whimpered, and rushed to his mistress. And it was really unusual because before, Alexis often left the house on her business without Charlie, and he was always quiet. Well, what are you, Charlie? I won't be long. I'll come home soon. I'll bring you something tasty. And in the evening, we'll go for a walk for a whole 2 hours. Honestly, you'll go to the playground and meet your friends. With Wolfie and Richie. Wait a bit, we'll be there soon. Dad, hold him. Great, you've totally spoiled the dog. I'm not going to walk him for hours just to meet his needs. That's all. Just don't cheat. In the evening, you should really walk him so that his paws are tired and he sleeps like a dead man, or rather dead dog. Alexis embraced her pet once again, making all sorts of promises, but it didn't seem to calm him down. As she got into the car and waved her hand at Charlie, the dog went berserk and chased after them with a long howl, causing Shane to struggle to hold the leash. What's wrong? He's gonna drag me along. What a strong dog. Let's go home. Your mistress will be here soon. Oh, she spoils the dog. I can't imagine what she'll do to her children if she pampers them like that. Shane, they shouldn't have left. The dog must have sensed something. Claudia wailed in fear. Should we call them? Should we bring them back? Are you okay? Well, let's bring them back then. Let's let the dog ruin their plans and yours. Go home, Charlie. Where's your home? Let's go. Come on, Claudia. The dog just misses her. It broke my heart when he howled. It's not a good sign. Come on, Charlie. Come on, honey, don't pull Daddy. You won't catch up with the car anyway. Soon Alexis will be back and you'll go for a walk. Oh, I can't calm down. I feel something bad is ahead, the distressed mother said and almost passed out with anxiety. Meanwhile, Shane kept persuading her. The dogs don't sense anything. Be quiet. Remember, have any of your bad omens come true? No, never. So calm down. Aren't you tired of always seeing the negative side of things? Shane himself was anxious inside too. He didn't know why, whether it was because of the dog's behavior or his wife's distress. Mostly he blamed Claudia for actually scaring herself, which in turn frightened him. Surely it was the result of her superstitious nature. She believes all sorts of nonsense. Soon she'll start going to some fortune tellers to remove curses or something, he thought with annoyance. At home, Charlie seemed to calm down, lying down in his spot, resting his head on his paws and staring off into space. Well, you see, he's lying there quietly. He doesn't need anything, said Shane, who had noticed a big tear rolling down from the dog's eye. And it's time for you to calm down. You're getting all worked up. Take a pill for your blood pressure. What does that have to do with it? You know, anything can happen on the road. What could happen? They're not going to the North Pole. It's just a short trip. You could have gone with them, though, because they could go overboard with their expenses. You would look at the budget. This change of topic had a calming effect on Claudia. She started talking about how much money they had set aside. But what are we going to do if Alexis decides to marry soon? Come on, we'll figure it out. I don't think she'll be leaving anytime soon. There's still a year or two left. We'll save up. No sooner had the couple distracted themselves with talk of business than a long, chilling howl came from the living room. Charlie lifted his head and let out a hopeless howl. Claudia clutched her heart and, without saying a word to her husband, began dialing the phone numbers of her daughters. "They're both not answering, Shane," she said to her husband, who was also looking at her in fear. "What should we do?" And then the phone, which she still held in her hand, rang. Claudia cried out in surprise and, without looking at the screen, threw the phone onto the sofa as if it were a ready-to-strike snake. "No," she weakly cried. "No, I'm not going to answer," and slowly approached the door. Shane picked up the ringing phone, put it to his ear, and listened for a long time. Then he sank into a chair, looking back at his wife, who stood frozen. Her pale face expressed both horror and understanding of what her husband had just heard. The car in which their daughters and Isaac were driving collided head-on with a truck on a dangerous turn. The collision left no chance. The bride and groom were instantly killed. Alexis survived, but she was in a coma in the hospital. Instead of a wedding, the parents now faced a funeral. Nina was dressed in her wedding dress and veil. The groom was buried nearby, in the very suit he was going to wear for the wedding. Isaac's parents had an older son, while Nina's parents were left only with the hopes for Alexis's recovery, although there was little hope left. The doctors did everything they could, but it yielded no results. They exhausted all means, not wanting to let go of this young, vibrant life. But it was not enough. Father and mother turned from elderly, but quite sturdy people, into decrepit old men in one. The world for them ceased to exist, lost all its colors, narrowed down to the hospital room where Alexis was lying. Every day they visited her in a hospital, hoping for a miracle, and the faithful dog eagerly awaiting their return. But every time, as they entered with heavy hearts, Charlie dropped his head in disappointment, understanding that there was no good news. He barely ate and rarely ventured outside, preferring to stay home, occasionally whimpering in his sleep. "Quiet, Charlie, quiet." Shane soothed, gently stroking the dog's head. "Your mistress will come back," she promised. "She'll be cured and come back." However, with each passing day, their belief in miracles dwindled, and even the doctors had lost faith. They sympathetically looked at the parents and kept saying that they should wait and hope, that the human brain was too complex and everything was possible. But it was clear to Alexis's parents from the look in their eyes that perhaps not everything was possible. They were already being prepared for the worst outcome. But how can one be prepared for that? The depressed father and mother arrived at the hospital, enviously looking at other visitors who had brought bags of treats. It was a sign of hope. Meanwhile, their daughter was sustained solely by IV drips, a testament to their unfulfilled hopes. Inside their daughter's room, they gazed at her motionless body, longing for her recovery, uncertain if it would ever happen. Even the doctors refrained from entering the ward, exchanging only sympathetic gestures with the inconsolable parents in the corridor. However, one young doctor stood out, catching Claudia's attention. She sensed that his concern for their daughter went beyond his professional duties. Yet, Alexis was not a sleeping beauty who could be awakened by a kiss. Love alone could not conquer this battle. What a beautiful couple they would have made, thought the grief-stricken mother. One day, upon entering their daughter's room, the parents encountered a concilium of doctors. Realizing that the fate of their child hung in the balance, they stood motionless by the door, for their lives depended on the outcome. The doctors turned to face the two gray figures, barely noticeable, if not for their bright blue shoe covers. It was the young doctors who addressed them. "Let's not conceal the truth. Your daughter's condition is critical. The only option left is to try an experimental medicine that has shown promise in trials, but we need your consent. Will you give it?" Claudia and Shane exchanged glances. A new medicine? An experiment? Desperate and devoid of hope? Could they refuse such an opportunity? "Take your time to consider, and then inform me of your decision. There are no other alternatives. No one knows what else to do. She may continue to exist like this, but this is not the life you wished for your daughter. Moreover, the costs of ongoing care will be substantial," explained the doctor before departing with the others. Shane and Claudia stayed alone. "Well, what can we do? In the end, there will only be one ending. Let them try," the father said. "I understand that it cannot get any worse," his wife agreed. Yet they were acutely aware of the exorbitant cost of both the previous treatments and the new one, a sum they could not possibly afford. They had exhausted all their savings and now contemplated selling their car and cottage. They began searching for buyers, knowing that time was of the essence. They did not consider their own living arrangements, for they had no intention of living if their second daughter did not survive. Perhaps now Alexis would have a chance at life. Even if she remained disabled, her existence would be a blessing. Come on, Shane, let's agree. What choice do we have? Yes, the doctor is young and may lack experience, but I can see his genuine concern for Alexis. He wants her to recover as much as we do, since there are no other options. You're right, Claudia. She cannot endure this state indefinitely. Something has to change. With their decision made, they visited the doctor's office to convey their agreement to proceed with the new treatment. Returning home, they anxiously awaited news from the hospital, aware that the treatment had yet to commence. But then, unexpectedly, Charlie, seemingly understanding their plight, lifted his head once again, his eyes brimming with hope as he looked at his owners. Well, Charlie, Claudia sighed, stroking the dog. Either Alexis will return to us or we will go to her. Stay calm, don't rush, she said, noting the dog's apprehension and whimpers. It's easier with a dog. They'll probably just put him down when the owners are gone. Who would want such a huge dog, even used to other people? Or maybe he'll just die of boredom. That happens to dogs too. Yes, he was young, but he was really on the verge. You go eat a little, or Alexis will come back and won't recognize you. Look how thin and shabby you've gotten, just like me and her father. The dog, as if understanding Claudia's words, wandered into the kitchen. He had really lost a lot of weight after what had happened, and now apparently, he decided that it was necessary to tidy up a little for the arrival of the mistress. Shane and his wife hadn't eaten much themselves, and they didn't have the energy to cook, and now Claudia decided to cook something. Otherwise, her daughter would really get well while they'd collapse. True, it was still unknown whether Alexis would recover and what would be the most favorable outcome. What if she remained an invalid, unable to care for herself? This was something they had not asked the doctors about. So more time passed, and it became clear that, alas, the treatment did not work. Alexis remained in the same condition. Dr. Milmore himself almost cried, telling them about his failure. He realized that this simply kills the parents, who were so hopeful for the recovery of their daughter. Of course, it was not his fault that the treatment did not work. He himself sincerely hoped for it, but now he had to tell the parents the worst part. Since the treatment isn't working and there's no hope, you should think about taking off life support. I am really sorry, but there is not even a little hope. The girl is only suffering by staying in such a state. Shane and Claudia had no more tears or words left, only nodded. They understood everything. It was useless to torture their daughter. There was no hope anymore. To leave her in such a state, even if there was money, was simply cruel. Dr. Milmore apologized and left the ward, leaving his parents alone with their dying daughter. He had nothing more to say to them, and they had no words left, only to say goodbye to Alexis. Well, daughter, you see, we tried and nothing worked, said Claudia, taking her hand. God willing, if you meet Nina there, tell her that we are deeply grateful to you both for the years you've been with us. And she stepped back, letting Shane say goodbye to his daughter. He too walked over and took Alexis' palm in his hands. He didn't have time for saying anything. From the corridor came some shouting and strange but very familiar dog barking and the stomping of heavy paws. It was Charlie. Having frightened both doctors, patients, and visitors, he burst into the hospital and flew up to the right floor like a white lightning. By some miracle, he found the right ward and burst into it, howling, muffled. He ran to the bed, put his paws on it, and started licking Alexis' face. "What is it, Charlie? How did you get here?" Shane said in shock. Indeed, how could the dog find the clinic where he had never been, especially since their home was at least 5 kilometers away? But he found it, came running, and rushed to his mistress. Dr. Milmore entered the room. "Whose dog is that? How did it get in here? Why?" he asked strictly. "It's Alexis's dog," Claudia explained. "He loved her so much, let him say goodbye too. Honestly, we didn't bring him. I don't know how he found his way." The doctor nodded and left the room. Indeed, it was necessary to let the dog say goodbye, and it was hardly possible for anyone to take away such a huge animal who was in such a state of excitement. Leaving the room, he leaned against the wall, contemplating the loss of such a wonderful girl. Suddenly, he heard the beeping of sensors, indicating that the patient was regaining consciousness. It was a miracle. Alexis opened her eyes and her gaze was quite meaningful. The first thing she saw was the dog's face. With a wheeze from her parched throat, she whispered, "Charlie." She recognized her mother and father, although she initially had no memory of why she was in the hospital. Days went after days, and Alexis started recovering slowly. Her intelligence was intact, and her muscles had not atrophied too much. Later, her mother asked if Alexis had heard her and her father talking to her while she was unconscious. Alexis said she hadn't heard anything, only the dog barking. It seemed that Charlie had somehow called out his mistress, and she responded to the call. Alexis's recovery progressed. Soon, she was discharged home, although she had to visit the rehabilitation center for some more time. But it was not difficult, especially since she always had Dr. Milmor Nikolaevich by her side, who at first visited her as if on duty, but eventually confessed that he had some other feelings for her. Alexis, who had long dreamed of true love, readily accepted his advances. Besides, she needed a guide, and with Dr. Milmor, it was not difficult to go to the cemetery or to walk with Charlie. As for the dog, he seemed to realize that his mistress was weaker than before, but he was so happy to be able to run and walk again that it was impossible to keep up with him. Claudia and Shane were also grateful to God for Alexis' recovery. They were delighted to hear that Alexis and Dr. Milmor were considering marriage. It was all a real ray of hope in their devastated lives.